All right. Well, I think we'll get started, and usually more people will kind of trickle in. Um, we have a really exciting session planned with you all. We're going to go a little deeper into kata and have some more examples. And kind of the format will be having a coaching cycle with Mark acting as the second coach, coaching the coach, and then open up for Q&A. And then we'll have a second coaching cycle going, and then again have some time for questions, and that'll be kind of the format. If you don't know, actually, no, I see everyone on this call. Yeah, I recognize everyone, so I won't introduce us as COS, but just know that our mission here is to shine light and to help people reach their potential. And one of that kind of applications is actually going to be lived out today by having two of our friends and colleagues from Nordstrom, Stephanie and Lisa, actually participate in the teaching. So they don't work at COS. They've never worked at COS. They've toured us a bunch, and we've become friends, and they've learned with us about this whole thing called kata. So that's part of our manifesto for sure. So last week, if you joined us or if you watched the YouTube video of it, we basically went through the mechanics of how kata works, kind of step by step, the 4 steps of kata, which is grasping the current condition or setting the challenge, grasping the current condition, setting a target condition, and experimenting against obstacles on our way towards the target condition. So you'll see that and get that kind of more ingrained in you today during today's episode. Yeah, with that, I'm going to turn over to our friend and colleague Mark Rosenthal, who's going to explain the role of the second coach, which is the role he's going to fulfill today, and what he looks for in a coaching cycle when he's observing a coaching cycle like Lisa or Darrin today. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through I'm going to call this walking through a storyboard, and just kind of explain the linkages that I'm listening for. And then let's just go through what the whole reason for doing this is. And the thing to keep in mind is this walk through the storyboard is really from the coach's perspective. But if I'm coaching a coach, these are the sorts of things I'm going to be asking a coach to be working on to improve their coaching. So it's kind of a meta thing, right? So my first question is, does the challenge actually about the focus process? So here's the process we're trying to improve, and this is our challenge in that process. So is there an actual relationship there? And typically this gets resolved like pretty early on. Then I'm going to ask, okay, does the target condition actually relate to the challenge? You'd be surprised that sometimes it's not as obvious as it might be. Okay, now can I hear the target condition and then hear the current condition? And do I have a way to go apples and apples? Can I compare the two? And can I see the gap that the learner is trying to close to reach the target condition right now? So I'm going to be looking for essentially is the target condition and the actual condition, or at least the part of the actual condition we're discussing, to be expressed in the same terms. Right? What is the gap between A and B? Okay, so then the next step is to ask the reflection questions. So the learner is being asked, what did you plan? What did you expect? What actually happened? What did you learn? And what I'm going to be paying attention to is there a logical connection between what was learned and what was actually done? So was there some actual reflection and thinking here? The opposite of that is just writing something down in order to have an answer. The next question is, what obstacles are currently preventing you from achieving your target condition, and which one are you addressing? So is that obstacle being addressed actually related to the target condition? Sometimes I'll see an obstacle that's bigger, it's related to a challenge, but it isn't related to the target condition right now, for example. Then the other thing I'm going to be listening for is, does it Does it expressed in terms of a problem that we need to overcome, an obstacle we need to overcome in order to reach the target condition? Because frequently we'll see a to-do list, or we'll see an implied solution like lack of standard work as an obstacle. That's not an obstacle, that is lack of a specific solution. What's the problem you're trying to solve? The next question is, what are you planning as your next step? Well, does that next step actually address the one obstacle that the learner said that he's working on right now? And the other thing is, does what's expected as an outcome logically follow from the action they're going to take? A little verbal test here, I think I went through this the last time, is if I were to say I intend to, and then read the experiment, and then say in order to, and then read the expected outcome, is that a logical sentence that one's going to lead from the other? And usually the expectation is that I'm going to learn something. Okay, and yeah. And then that's what I just said. Does what's expected logically follow from the next step? So does the next experiment actually address the obstacle? And does what is expected logically follow from the step that the learner's trying to take? Now, all of this comes with a caveat, because it is insanely easy for a beginning coach to get so focused on this being perfect that you try to correct everything. And all that does is blast the board with a shotgun, and you leave with a demoralized learner. So, and I learned this lesson the hard way a few times. So here's the real question. What is the learner actually learning? Is this process, is this questioning process actually developing the learner's skill? What is the goal of the coach? Is the coach actively attempting, actively leading the learner through a learning experience? In other words, the quality of the storyboard does not matter unless the process is developing the learner's skill. And if you have to sacrifice one or the other, sacrifice the storyboard and even the structure. Now, don't do that lightly, because the structure is engineered for learning. But I have run into learners where structure was not something they did. I'm going to resume share. Did you all see that stuff develop? Because I don't know if my animations were working, because I saw that sharing was paused. So
there were
just
not
walk
no
through it really
animations.
quickly.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Okay, quickly again. Is the challenge about the focus process? Does the target condition relate to the challenge? Can I see a gap between the actual condition and the current condition, apples versus apples? Does what was learned in the last experiment follow from the experiment that was actually done? Is the obstacle being addressed related to the target condition in some way? Does the next experiment actually address the obstacle? And does what is expected logically follow from what the next experiment is going to be? And the key here is the learner actually learning? And is this process developing their skill at seeing the system, at identifying problems and systematically experimenting to solve them? In other words, that learning experience is, although the kata structure is crucial for good practice, the learning experience is primary here. That is the goal. And coaches, don't lose sight of the reason you're asking the questions. It's not a rote exercise. Okay, so my problem is the little thing that says your sharing has stopped is on the other monitor, so I don't see it out of the corner of my eye. Something I need to fix.
No worries.
Okay, so I think what Tucker has in mind is essentially the two folks, Darrin and
Amgad,
Amgad, who we kind of watched last time, that coaching cycle last time was from a few months ago. And they were a little shy to do this live, but we're going to go through just basically start to finish through the video. And I'm going to ask all of you to kind of mentally follow the checklist I just went through. And then I'm going to kind of share what I would coach Darrin to do with you guys. And actually, I may ask you to share what you would coach Darrin to do with me. Okay,
That's a good
so
call.
let's let it
plan
rip
on doing
here.
that.
One piece flow.
Your challenge?
Have a system in place in a form that support one piece flow from start to finish, that easily understood and followed by July 1st.
And then your target condition.
Clearly define standard work for one piece flow of falling foam and Haas machines.
And your current condition today?
Have no clearly defined standard work for one piece flow at Haas machines, wrapping and hand cut, using scanning QR code and dashboard for current status, using the ring toss as a pull signal for Haas machines and routing. Team not following one piece flow at Haas machines. Current layout does not support one piece flow on Haas machines.
Okay. And then what did you plan as your last step?
Last step, moving 50% of the shipping boxes to the warehouse and 50% is across the elevator.
So which is which? Usually we do the last one on top. Was this supposed to be up here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, so move 50% of shipping boxes to the warehouse and 50% to shelf across the elevator.
Yes.
Okay, what did you expect?
Pick to work with Jason to find out what shelf is not in use and we can use it. Work with Daryl to build one more shelf and the rack and move boxes to the new home. That was expect.
Cool, what happened?
Jason found the shelf we can use, and I cleaned the shelves and maintenance team helped to install it. Chris helped to move boxes to the new place, and we still have some boxes left need to be moved to the warehouse, and Jason will be taking care of it.
Cool, and what did you learn?
Learn, it saves too much space for foam department.
I don't know if there's a problem of saving too much space. Seems like a good thing.
Just create more space for foam department. That will be.
Yeah, so just some coaching there on using the term. What you just said, if you wrote that down, that would make more sense.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because the way that you say it saves too much space, it sounds like it saved too much space, where you said you created more space to help in the foam department. That's different.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool. And then what else?
Okay, so create more space for foam department to help with the layout. Shipping boxes now too close to the elevator. Material management and maintenance and foam leaders done a great job to get it done in 2 days.
Cool. And there's your picture.
And here's what we have right now. So we had to move all that fibers, casters in the top shelves, and we create one more shelf here. And yeah, Chris this morning helped to move all the boxes there.
That's awesome.
And
yeah, thanks. You guys, I will say that you guys do a really good job of both your foam katas of getting objective evidence into the folder. So I could probably learn from you guys, because it's much easier to reference back and as you're telling the story. So that's a great job. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, thank you. That's the picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what obstacles are now keeping you from reaching the target condition?
No clearly defined standard work for one-piece flow for cutting foam and Haas machines. Don't know how to set up the new layout for the Haas machines.
So is it still an obstacle? Is that still an obstacle? Because you pretty much have already decided what your new layout.
I believe we have the layout, but that's the maintenance will come there to have a plan and to have maintenance department.
Okay, so the obstacle is that you need to set up the new layout. You need to set up the Haas machines per the new layout. That's really your obstacle, right?
Yes, I believe so. I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and make that adjustment in that obstacle. Reword that.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, so that's is that the one you're gonna address?
Yes.
Perfect. So then what is your next step then?
Have a plan with maintenance department for moving the Haas machine or to set up the Haas machines and wrapping stations.
So your next step is strictly just to have a plan?
Have a plan and moving.
Or is it to plan and do?
No, plan and do.
Okay, yeah, that's the one thing that Ken is kind of encouraging me on. If there's just something so simple, is it can either be, hey, let's meet in 2 hours and we'll review it because I can go do it right now type of thing. And in this case, I would hate to meet again just to say, okay, you got a plan. So cool. So when do you think we can meet again and review what you learned?
What I expect to have the machines and equipment moved and complete the layout by May 27th.
By when?
May 27th.
May 27th?
Yeah.
Okay, so like next Friday they're planning on moving, or Thursday or Friday they're planning on moving?
We'll look for it Wednesday, Thursday. We'll coordinate that with Chris and Daryl and see what we can do. But my goal is to finish it by the end of next week.
Yeah, because you have to play around that that crew seating's pretty much working 4 days next week.
Yeah, we'll see the schedule for the machine in that day, and we'll plan for it. And also, I gave Daryl heads up to start grabbing all the casters, air casters for moving the Haas machines. And Daryl already has heads up from last week for the new layout. So hopefully he's already prepared for it. So we just need to make a plan.
Do you want to?
So I'll go ahead and stop a little early because they're just talking about logistics and not as interesting for the coaching cycle. But so let's open up to the. Yeah, go for Mark. You can facilitate this.
Sure thing. So I'm just going to ask in general, there's a lot there's a lot there, and there's a lot really good. The rapport is awesome. So, but I want to ask if there was one thing that you want to coach the coach to emphasize or to work with his learner to do a little better. One thing. What would it be? And then I'll share some thoughts I had. Just take a stab at it. I mean, I'll make you wrong if you're wrong, but it's just humiliation, so it's no big deal.
So Mark, I'll say it wasn't clear to me how the work that he had just done is going to get him closer to single piece flow.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't
And I think
connect.
that's kind of a theme. Okay. Now let's push on that a bit. Think about the objective of one-by-one flow. So what we heard in his actual, so his goal is one-by-one flow in the process, which is awesome because that's actually almost a challenge. In his actual condition, one of the elements of actual condition is there's no one-by-one flow. So that's basically saying that I have a target condition and my actual condition is I'm not meeting my target. So what is the flow right now? What is the actual process?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What is the indexing, or even better, what's the work cycle right now that explain to me why we don't have one, not why we don't, but what is the flow that is different from one by one. So I don't want to ask why we don't, because that invites excuses, right? What I want to ask is what's actually happening. So one of my keys here is when I hear a negative, what I always ask is, okay, but what is happening? That's one of my little tricks to reverse when somebody says what is not happening or not there. Great, what is happening? Because that's what I want to know. We saw the same thing again when one of the obstacles is we don't have one-by-one flow. So my obstacle to reaching my target is I'm not at my target. So what I would coach the coach to work on here is to maybe even go down and watch the process himself in order to see what the answer should be, and do that side by side with his learner and work with the learner to develop a if you're using standard work diagrams or standard work paperwork, whatever you do, what is the actual process now, and how does that differ from the one-by-one flow process that we want?
I have a question. So does that mean they're not
Yeah,
clear
please.
so does that mean they're not clear on the target condition? So was the question not asked or understood? What is your current condition? Is that part of the gap, or no, not really?
So this is where I'm going to say this is the one thing I want them to work on, is getting a better understanding and expressing the actual condition now versus a bullet list. What is the actual process? So coming back around and answering your question, that would, I want to get them into that, but I don't want to hit them with all of it at once. Because I think my hypothesis is if they work on understanding what the actual condition is now, my hypothesis is they will be able to better understand what that process would look like with one-by-one flow and describe it.
And does that mean then they'll find the obstacle of what's keeping them from that condition?
Yeah, the obstacle's going to show up. Cause I'm hearing right now, and I know that the layout is a problem because the stuff's all over the place and it's set up for batching. They're moving stuff around, which is like seriously awesome. So, but if you showed me the diagram of the layout and showed me how the layout was impeding doing one-by-one flow, I would understand why you're changing the layout, because that's expensive.
That's
So it all kind of relates, come back around to, what are the physical gaps we're having to close because the layout has stuff on opposite sides of the room, for example. And that would just make it more clear to me. Now, I'm going to say is that it's very easy to fall into this trap when you're doing an electronic board, because it's much easier to type bullet points than it is to sketch pictures, take pictures of them and put them up there. That's one advantage a physical board has, is people can just draw it on a sheet of paper and with tape or a thumbtack put it up there. So that's part of the limit. That's not a limitation. It requires extra work to do a good job in a electronic format. But that's what I'll say. So, but that would be the one thing I would advise is let's get more specific about what's actually happening, and please explain how that's different from how you want it to work. And then why can't you just make it work that way? It gives you a better obstacle list. We don't want to have to-dos on there. Now, the other thing I'm going to say, this was seriously awesome, was that we got a little coaching on just expression and just English, because clearly we have an ESL situation here, and that was very supportive about, it's not that you're saving too much space. We know what you meant to say. Here's a better way to say it. And that was seriously cool. So again, that would be the one thing. There's there's a laundry list of things that we could address, but that would be the one thing I think would have the biggest impact. And probably help that coach across the board, because I'm going to guess if I looked at his other coaching cycles, I'll see the same issue.
Yeah, I
What do y'all
definitely.
think?
Oh, sorry. I'll just add one little thing, and then we have time for another question or thought as well from the rest of you. But I will agree that the digital aspect is definitely can be an obstacle to that, because on my own kata with Jeff and Oz also on the call, I had a very long list of the current condition, and then finally I just drew on a whiteboard how I want it, what the operating pattern I want, and what I currently have, and I found 3 or 4 more obstacles just by doing that. And it does take a little extra work, but not enough to not do it. So yeah. Anyone else have a reflection or a question to add before we move on to Lisa and Stephanie?
I was just going to add that I think the better the understanding of the current condition, the more likely you're going to have identification of the barriers in the way.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the things I always say is if there's ever a gap in the whole thing, focus on better understanding of the current condition, because that's the default place to go. What's actually happening? Steve Spear, who's I'm a great fan of, I love one of my favorite pull quotes from him is that the root cause of all problems is ignorance. There's something we don't understand. And if we understood it well enough, then the solution will fall out.
Mark, what do you think is the main obstacle for people from going deeper on the current condition? Why
it's
not?
The American to-do list mentality, because that's what we're seeing here. It's a list of action items rather than actual studying what's going on. We know how to do one by one flow. Oh, great. Then explain to me how it's going to work when you're done. So we could see that target condition get fleshed out a little more. Here is how we want the flow to actually work. Here's the timing. Here's the sequence of steps that each operator carries out. And they've got they've got an NFL playbook with 2 or 3 different plays depending on the product. So they would have to show which one are they working on and all of that. But the one thing is get a process understanding of the current condition, and that will lead to the rest.
With that, we're going to transition to the second coaching cycle. So I'd like to introduce Stephanie and Lisa, who work at Nordstrom, and I'm actually have you guys introduce yourselves. So Lisa, why don't we start with you? Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Lisa Lamano, and I'm the senior raw material developer for sourcing all sweater yarns for Nordstrom.
And I'm Stephanie. I'm the senior raw material developer for cut and sew knits for NPG Nordstrom.
Awesome.
And NPG is new product.
Nordstrom Product Group, sorry.
Nordstrom Product Group.
One thing to know about Nordstrom is
Okay.
they have acronyms for days. So yes,
Yeah.
Nordstrom Product Group.
It's our private label business.
Private label, yeah.
Mhm.
So I got involved with this team back in the fall, and I was thinking about like the story of how I got involved with them, and I actually don't remember. It must have been like I was like, somehow I talked to Abby, who's their boss, and then Jamie at some point, and then I just made friends. So I don't know the whole story, it doesn't really matter. But they've been practicing kata since then. I helped them kind of get going with learning the mechanics of it and the basics of it, and then they kind of took it and made kind of had life of its own, which is pretty exciting to kind of see the progress that they made without my involvement really much at all. So with that, Lisa, go ahead and share whoever is going to share the screen, go ahead and share your screen, and then we'll get into the coaching cycle. And then again, Mark will kind of help lead us through reflection at the end of it. So.
And I'm just going to share, this is cold for me too. This, the other one I cheated because I kind of looked at the video, but this is cold, so it'll be interesting.
Okay, and everybody see my screen? Okay. Okay.
Good.
All right, Stephanie, what is our target condition?
Our target condition is to roll out a minimum viable standard for strategic fabric ordering.
And what is the current condition?
So currently we have tools in place to support the strategic positioning, and we've rolled it out to some teams. We still need to roll it out to the kids team and our external supply partners.
And what was our last experiment?
So our last experiment was to share with New Times, our supplier, our SharePoint page, our raw material SharePoint page, which we've added some process tools to see if they can access it, because we know that's an internal site, and we didn't know if we could share it externally.
Mm-hmm. And what did we expect to happen?
Well, we expected that maybe we wouldn't hear back because there was a couple holidays we had last week on their end. We thought maybe they wouldn't be able to access the page at all, and that there also might be security issues or permissions needed to be able to share this page outside of Nordstrom.
Okay, and then what actually happened?
What happened is we did receive some feedback today. Both suppliers in India and Hong Kong were able to see our page, but they weren't able to actually click on any of the links that we put on the page that we were hoping that they would have access to.
Okay. So what is our next experiment then?
So the next experiment would be going into the SharePoint page again on our site and seeing if I could give individual access to every link on that page for the suppliers to view.
Okay, and then what do we expect to happen or learn?
I think it could take a while. We have quite a few links on that page to share. We might run into more permission blocks or issues where maybe we can't share the links. We might have to get our BI team involved to help us resolve these issues. And I know our suppliers have so much going on right now. They might not have time to go link by link and test this out for us.
Okay, and it looks like we could probably see that by June 2nd, next Wednesdays.
Yeah, that feels realistic with the holiday weekend coming up. Give them a little time to reply.
Cool. All right. And end scene.
End thing. So I'm going to start from the top on this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's come back to your coach. What is the learner's target? A whole different thing. Hey, coach,
Mm-hmm.
what's your goal for the learner's learning? What are you working on to help the learner do this better? Where are you emphasizing?
As we're going through it, because we did this was our kata this morning that we ran through.
Yeah.
It was to keep it in the same vein as what our obstacles are. So we do have an obstacle parking lot that we've been going through, and one of them is technology, is what we've been experimenting against, so that we can make sure that we share things out. And also, which we didn't share here, but we do have a block diagram where we know like what steps in the process. And so now we're working on the first block in the process.
Okay. So Lisa, let me ask a leading question. You as the coach, what process are you working to improve?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. So Stephanie is working to improve your, what process is that?
Our strategic projection.
That you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stephanie's working to improve your strategic projections process. That's not what you should be working on. What are you working to improve?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure as a coach
your
what
job
I am working on, just keeping them on track.
Is Stephanie's execution of the improvement kata. Because that's a process. So what you're looking for is, okay, I'll give you an example. When I took some ski lessons many, many years ago, first thing that the instructor had us do was she skied down the hill, and she had us ski down the hill and cut some turns. So what was she doing?
She was watching
in the terms of the improvement kata. She's grasping the current condition. Because she's never met me before. So based on what she saw, she gave me one thing to work on to develop, so that I could be a better skier if I practiced that one thing. Now, it's not going to make me able to compete in the Olympic downhill, not anytime soon, but it will make me a better skier if I can master this one thing. So do you have one thing that you're working to improve in the way Stephanie carries out the improvement kata?
There is something that we continuously work towards, and that is not having assumptions about what's going, and also watching the bit size of each experiment, so that it's like, when can it happen, and is this a doable thing within this time
Excellent.
frame?
Okay. So where was she on that right now?
So far, I think pretty good, because there, like, actually, it's funny, during our discussion today, we did talk about some of the assumptions we were making, like when we share things out externally, like, oh, maybe we need to make it simpler, maybe we need to do screenshots, maybe we need to all this stuff, and then why are we saying that? Why are we presuming to know what the obstacles are before we hit the obstacle? Like, why don't we just send them the deck, let them see it, and if they have issues, then they come back, and then we work against those obstacles.
That's the actual condition. So what obstacles do you think are preventing Stephanie from making assumptions?
I think,
Or what do you are preventing her from?
well,
I said that completely backwards, didn't I? Are preventing her from getting facts rather than making assumptions?
well, there's history probably
Yeah. Okay.
of having issues when you send something and then
Yeah.
not getting the answer back. Also, she already had
Yeah.
sent the test
Okay.
out, and then they just came back and said,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, we had access. And you're like, well, I meant, did you see the
Yeah.
things that I sent
Okay.
you, not just could you get in there?
Okay. Is there one thing that you're working with her on right now?
I don't think so. I think what the interesting thing about
Okay.
our team's kata is that we're all involved in the kata versus there's another team
Understood.
that
Yeah.
I'm supposed to coach and I'm not involved in the kata. So those have two different feelings to me about coaching. Like, because the one that's not
Okay.
involved in my team, like I don't have a personal interest in,
Yeah. Okay.
and I'm not currently
So,
involved in.
so here's an interesting point. You know, do you think Pete Carroll has a personal interest in whether the Seahawks win?
I don't know who Pete Carroll is.
Oh, he's the coach of the Seattle Seahawks. I'm sorry. Well, the point is the coach absolutely is responsible for winning, but he can't play. He shouldn't play. So if you're getting too involved in the process itself, you're losing sight of developing your learner's execution of the improvement kata. So what I'm advising you to do is take a step back and look at how this board is playing out, not the content, but the structure. So, for example, your target condition is an action item. It has a verb. It starts with a verb, roll out. So what will, if you go to your achieve by date, what will your process be?
You mean, what's the challenge?
No, that's the point. The target condition is a statement of what the future is going to look like. So in 2 weeks or whatever your achieve by date is. What is, so you want to express it.
Gotcha.
Express it in the present tense. What is happening?
So our target condition would be that our internal and external partners are all working with us on strategic orders, right?
Yeah, with whatever process you want them to be working on at that point.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Now, in relation to that, what is the actual condition? And now you can start to get apples and apples. Who is, who isn't, what process are they carrying out versus the process you want them to carry out?
Gotcha.
So if you just worked on that and think in terms of how do I want the process to work and how is the process working now?
Gotcha.
And remove action item language from the whole thing, you'll make a big step here.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, as soon as you said that, then it made sense of what the current, it's just like the previous example. It's like understanding that current, then you see the gap.
Yeah.
And then you see the obstacles.
Yeah.
Totally get that.
So a red flag is if a target condition starts with a verb. Then it's likely an action item. And you mentioned you had an obstacle list, but you just blew right by that question. So please be consistent in asking all of the questions.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I'll ask one more thing. On the last experiment, and this is, I'm just kind of going, I don't want you to try to fix all of this. I'm just giving advice, okay? So I'm going beyond what I would do as a second coach, because really a second coaching cycle is exactly the same as a primary coaching cycle. What's your target condition? What's the actual condition? But what we're asking about is the learner's execution of the improvement kata rather than the process you're working on. And you heard that's what I was doing there.
Gotcha.
So you can always ask yourself those questions. and you can fill out an experiment record, and you can say, okay, in this next coaching cycle, what am I going to emphasize? And how do I expect my learner to respond? And you can then say, what did my learner learn? What have I learned about coaching? And you can improve your own coaching the same way. So that's a very powerful thing to do. And the only other thing I'm going to comment on is, and this is a personal thing that I see. If you look at your last step, what did you expect? Well, I expected it not to work. Okay. What are you trying to learn? Okay. So come back around and re-ask, okay, if we expect it not to work, then why are we doing it? Is kind of a logical question. But you're doing it in order to learn the failure modes. You're doing it to learn why it doesn't work. You're learning to learn what you need to work on. That's more positive than I don't expect it to work.
Gotcha.
And it's perfectly legitimate to say, I don't expect it to work, but I need to learn why it won't work. Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot
but
of
have a
sense.
learning objective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a totally
So
different.
as a coach, you can always ask, well, what do you expect to learn when you get that kind of answer back?
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Perspective.
So I don't want to shotgun you too bad.
No, it's very
Anybody else?
interesting. It's very
Yeah.
a different perspective. Like as coaching, I didn't look at it as coaching the learner because we're involved. It's like it felt more like just continuing to coach the team along versus coaching a learner, where like when I'm working with a team outside of my team, it's very clear.
It's a lot easier when you're not in it every day. It really is. And so, and I remember a long time ago, I had a coach who was clearly had something he thought that the learner needed to do. And, my response was objection leading the witness. And his response was sustained, and he backed off and at the end, what they realized was that wasn't the problem. So he would have gone down this garden path of doing a lot of work on something that wouldn't have solved the issue. So it's really important. And as Tom pointed out very, very correctly, focus on the process, not the to-do list. What is actually happening now? Because you're doing this coordination with your suppliers and customers now. How are you doing it? How do you want to be doing it? And then you have process as a target condition and process as an actual condition.
Awesome.
And that's really the number one thing I always see is process, process, process. That's what you should be talking about, not to-dos. Okay.
No. Nice job. Thank you, Lisa and Stephanie, for being courageous and stepping out there on a limb.
Yeah.
And
thank you. Yeah.
Hopefully you got some value out of Mark's experience and feedback, because that's I've been in your position. We used to do this at COS where we'd have everyone in the lunchroom, and I was one of the guinea pigs. And first couple of times, I definitely took it more personally, but then I realized, like, oh man, if I take notes instead of be defensive, like I can learn a lot for sure. Really good stuff. So we have a little bit of time, about 10 minutes or so, for any questions about Kata. Lisa and Stephanie have been practicing for just over 6 months or so. So if you have any questions about their journey as well, we'll just open up the floor for the next 8-10 minutes.
I have a question, Mark.
Yeah.
In the last example, I like the fact that you pointed out that they expected it to fail.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a little bit surprised at that. And not only did they expect it to fail, they had specific failure modes that they were expecting.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, is one of the things that I want to teach the learner, the student, to do some confirmation on the things that you expect to fail? What are the things that you can do that will tell you whether or not it's going to fail beforehand? Like, could I go home and try to access this thing from my home computer and personal accounts to see if I can get access to it or not, like they might, like the supplier might? You know,
Yeah.
what can I do
Yeah.
to eliminate those from my list of failures so that I truly learn things I didn't expect to fail?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What they're doing is discovering obstacles. And so every failure mode that they discover should go on the obstacle list.
Yeah, and they
Because this is something
expected,
we have to experiment against. Yeah.
yeah. So some of the expected failures did fail. So it's like maybe those
Yeah.
could have been eliminated before you tried the experiment, so that those were taken off the list and
Yeah.
new things that you didn't know about would
Yeah.
show up.
That's a possibility. Or it could be a confirmation. You know, I mean, it's okay to make a prediction, and this is how it's okay to say this is what I expect to fail and why. Okay. And this is but I want to know what you're trying to learn, because if you're already certain, okay, and it's okay to confirm it too. I mean, I go to software development, right? The first thing that they will do is write a unit test that they know will fail because there isn't any code. They want to test the test. So it's kind of contextual, but it's kind of, but you're right. What I want to hear is, what do you expect to learn? Because what I alert to is, oh, I don't expect this to work. Okay, then I want to understand your reason for doing it.
That's good feedback. I think our perspective has always been, what are all the possible outcomes and
Yeah.
it not working being one of them, instead of asking ourselves what
Yeah.
expect to learn.
Well, so that's
Yeah.
a good question.
Yeah. What
are
do
all
you
the possible-
actually expect? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, what are all the possible failures?
Yeah.
Now, are there any of these on the list that we can circumvent and remove by doing confirmations, so that the ones that we don't expect we learn from?
I think one of the things we were trying to do too, which I'm not sure if this is part of Kata,
Yeah.
is that
Sure it is.
we make so many assumptions
Mhm.
that we wanted to go ahead and just lay out those assumptions too,
Cool.
so that when you come back and you go after you've done the experiment, you can go see,
Mhm.
so you can start recognizing where
Okay.
you're presuming that, like, oh, it's not going to work and they're not going to like it, and fine, put it out there, and then let's see when we come back, oh, we thought they wouldn't like it and they said they actually really liked what we did. So it was like kind of to face the
Okay.
presumptions.
Yeah. It's a gray area, and there's not, but everybody's right. But if it's you know, there's a perfectly legitimate to ask a follow-on question of, what assumptions are you making about how this is going to go, and just ask it that way, so that you can be explicit about it. Especially if you're working on some assumptions versus jumping to conclusions. But it's something I hear so much. Well, it's not going to work, and that's a red flag for me. And my reflexive follow-on question, rather than challenging it directly, asks, okay, well, what do you expect to learn by trying this? And that will typically pull better intent out, and it's very often I'll have them rewrite the expectations at that point. And so there's nothing wrong with an expectation, even requiring that the first words in what do you expect in the box are to learn. And then you would need to follow on from there. That's a pretty good little trick to structure that thinking. I expect to learn, and then, you know, I expect to learn that my countermeasure reduces cycle time by 8 seconds. Okay, that's the same as saying I expect the cycle time to drop by 8 seconds. I expect to learn the failure modes of our software, and whether they are this, and this, and then you can incorporate it. Just want to be crisp with the language and make sure that there's learning. It is intentional in that step, because otherwise it's just an action item.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Mark. And with this, we have about 5 minutes. I'm going to hand the ball over to Jeff to say some final thoughts before signing off.
Yeah, well, hey, number one, thank you, Lisa, Stephanie, and Abby Allen, for being here to support your team. every time I hear you guys are doing kata, like there's a certain amount of joy that hits my body that I can't explain. And then also to the rest of you who keep showing up. So you're kind of the last of the Mohicans. This is a 5-part series. So the fact that you're willing to stick with this is a real blessing to us. To see your smiling faces and to learn with you has been a real blessing to us. So, and then to Mark, you know, we would not be doing kata if it weren't for Mark generously coming in saying, hey guys, I see some stuff here. And you know, you probably would like to do kata. And he was not bashful about it. And he was, but he was also very kind. He didn't do the shotgun at us as much as for sure he could have. So number one, I want to say thank you. I think this is going to kind of be the end of the 5-part series, but I want to share something I learned today, which will hopefully encourage you and others to consider maybe sharing this way of working with others. I'm sure if you're doing kata, you've had these moments where like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what we learned. And I've heard people, especially with the Nordstrom team, I've heard people say, man, the raw material team, holy cow, like what they're doing is awesome. So I know that's happening. But today this thing happened where we're coaching a gentleman who is an orthopedic surgeon over in the Netherlands. And he went to the Gemba and 4 patients needed hip surgery. So basically he takes care of grandmas with broken hips. And his assumption of what was going on there was radically changed by showing up. And the basic story is I went down and bang, 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 4 in a row. And I was able to do my part. And then in under 30 minutes, I can serve these grandmas really well. And I was so excited. And I'm picturing my grandma getting the support she needs, being scared, probably being alone. And then he said the rest of the story was only one of them got to the ward on time. The other 3, for one reason or another, did not get to the ward on time. So, and one was given extra treatment that she didn't need. So it really personalized this to me to really say, okay, the work that we get to do together, there can be joy in it. There can be something exciting about work. And by following this process, I got to hear him say, wow, I went there, I saw, and I get to hear, it's to me, my thought was, this is like a soap opera. I can't wait to hear the next experiment cycle. I'm literally like, I can't wait till Tuesday. I did not expect as a coach or second coach to be so darned excited to hear about the next thing that people are doing. And it's been delivered to us as a gift from Mark and above, I'd say. But yeah, so I just say that I want to encourage you to keep going on this. And if all the energy is on the learner and really putting them in the center of all this, it's going to be magic. So anyways, so thanks for coming along for the ride. As a coach, when you get to the point where you're like, this is a soap opera, I can't wait for the next episode, please share it with the world. With that, yeah, that's all I have for you. Awesome. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks for sharing this with us.
Yeah, it's been awesome for me. Thanks. Awesome.